Hello, everybody. It's Stuart Broadley here from EIC, and welcome to another EIC Energy Insights podcast, fresh from a lovely 2 days in Milan, in Italy, for our first ever EIC Connect Italy event, which was a huge success. I'm here with Sara Castiglioni, who's Business Development Manager for Southern Europe, and for the event, helped organize the event, make sure we had some brilliant speakers there, and you were MC for the day as well. Well done. You're a natural.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
So a little bit on the event. This, as I say, is the first time we've done it. It was actually a sold-out show, and we wanted to just capture the key findings from the event quickly before it goes out of our minds and share it with everybody. This will become an annual event for sure. So a little bit on the Italy market. So EIC, on our database system called DataStream, of course, we track CapEx projects around the world. And in Italy, we're tracking 195 CapEx projects worth $150 billion. But really interestingly, just straight off the bat, the thing you need to know about that $150 billion is $100 billion of that is for floating offshore wind, and of which none of those projects currently are FID. So that just shows you how the Italy market is leaning heavily on assumptions about energy transition technologies. And it's all about bankability, infrastructure, technology, the alignment between policy, money, and industry. Sound familiar? Yeah, it's quite similar to other markets, of course. Another thing about Italy that's really important is they are a major net energy importer. 72% of their energy is imported on a net basis. So actually, there's quite a lot of similarities, I'd say, as we went through the event between Italy and, in fact, elements of the UK energy market, also elements of the Japan energy market, because I was in Japan recently. So things like high energy costs, all three countries share that. A high reliance on energy imports, making countries very vulnerable to energy shocks, but also very high quality domestic supply chains grown out of, in the case of the UK and Italy, oil and gas, and in the case of Japan, nuclear. All markets are focusing on offshore wind, and increasingly, from a Japan and Italy point of view, almost exclusively floating offshore wind because of geology reasons. And in the UK, of course, it's been fixed bed offshore wind so far. Now, the good projects are done, and they have to now look at floating offshore wind. All are in a phase of considering or actively restarting nuclear. All arguably need hydrogen. So that kind of sets the scene a bit. And when I think about the impact on Italy, Italy is one of those markets where they're impacted strongly by the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. Of course, as a net energy importer, today heavily reliant upon gas. This is having an impact and pushing prices up, of course, and making questions for the government around energy policy, vulnerability, storage, and so on. So a big focus on energy security is coming. And I think commentary in the room, Sara, that would seem to be that the impact of the Iran war and the Strait of Hormuz closure feels to some almost worse than COVID did. Because yes, there are travel restrictions like COVID, and there are safety and health concerns. But worse than that, in COVID, most projects still kept going. But currently, the feeling of a lot of people in the room was they're not seeing projects happening in the Middle East right now. In fact, projects are getting strongly delayed. What did you pick up?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. This is not only the impression I got yesterday, but also when I speak to my members and companies, they are extremely worried about these wars, these Straits of Hormuz closure, because UAE is a very active market for most of the European companies, especially here in Italy. We have a lot of companies working in the Middle East, and most of them had a lot of projects, but cannot, produce and deliver because there is this current situation. And so now they are trying to diversify and find other possible markets, but let me say it's a little bit late. This is a lesson that we should have learned after not say mainly the COVID, but after the Russia situation.
Italy was also strongly affected by the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Your major importer of gas from Russia, that cut off. Major importer of gas from the Middle East, that's cut off. Yeah, it's kind of when you're going to learn. So what does that mean? It means a more sovereign approach to energy policy. It means moving as quickly as you can to renewables. It means grid build-outs, because in Italy, unlike, say, the UK, where the power comes from renewable sources, particularly wind in Scotland, but the power demand is in London. In Italy, it's the other way around, right? So the wind blows the strongest, and the sun, of course, is hottest in the south of Italy, but the real power demand is in the north, right?
Yes, it is, but we could be more independent, but we are not. If we compare, for example, Spain and Italy, Spain are completely independent with the renewable, the wind, the solar. We are not, unfortunately. And that's the reason why we are so strongly dependent of the import of gas, and we have such a high cost nowadays.
And it's a big debate in the UK as well around, is the UK too reliant on gas or not, and the impact of that. So Italy obviously then is going through this whole process of trying to accelerate its transition. I don't think it's going very quickly. We talked about that. There's a lot of floating offshore wind projects, which seems to be the main reliance, but none are at FID. I mean, electrification is coming, of course, though, and we'll see what that means. I think still the market in the Middle East is seen as the most attractive market for companies we spoke to in Italy at the event. Even though there are delays in projects, companies are still long-term feeling like Middle East is the market to be in. Okay, so let's then think about, where do we start? Let's talk about, firstly, your view of the event itself. What sort of feedback did you get through the day?
This has been, as you mentioned, our first ESC Connect in Italy. And to be honest, we had sold out and a lot of delegates coming, not only from Italy, but also from Europe as well.
I love it when people say sold out. It doesn't happen very often in the events world, you know.
And we tried to had a chat with all of them, and they were so happy, not only because of the high level of the speakers, the high level of the topics we discussed, but also because they felt very, let's say, comfortable with the atmosphere. And this is something I think it's a great success above the numbers we had, because they will remember a lot of topics, a lot of people they met, but the good atmosphere they found not only at the event itself, but also at the reception cocktail. And they were so happy, all the sponsors, all the speakers, all the delegates, and this is our great success, I suppose.
Yes, it seems that actually there aren't that many events like this done, at least in Milan. So obviously we plan to do more of these and continue to build our network and our membership in the region. So credit to you and the wider events team of, Tunda, Rebecca and others for all the work they did to make this such a successful event. I think also one of the things that was good was that we looked at the Italy market with a wide spectrum, right? We weren't narrow in terms of with our bias of what we think is the best market. We just presented all of the markets, including data centers, right? And I think that was helpful for people coming in. They don't normally get an event like that, do they?
Yes, and also I would say we gave foreign companies the chance to come to attend the event, to present themselves to the domestic market, and which is something that it's quite unusual, especially in Italy. More or less, the events we have are Italian events with Italian companies, Italian people mainly, but we tried to make this event, let's say, European and also not international, but European.
Yeah, well, we had people there from the Middle East. We had people from across Europe and the UK. I think it delivered on that. And great speaker lineup too, right?
Yes. And all the speakers were very, very happy to be part of this event itself. Yes.
Yeah, and we're not going to name all the sponsors, exhibitors here. They'll be linked in the show notes, but a special thank you to our platinum sponsor, Mammoth Europe, which is a brilliant heavy lift company. If you don't know much about them, check them out. If you've got some of the most complex heavy lift challenges, then talk to them. Land-based, they have the heaviest heavy lift craneage capacity in the world. So, for instance, in the UK's nuclear projects of Hinkley Point C and Sizewell C, they are the lift company of choice. Brilliant company. Okay, so let's think about some of the things that resonated with me through the day. I'm going to start with nuclear. I just did not know until we came together to prepare for this went about the history of nuclear in Italy. Give me your quick summary of why has nuclear historically been so unpopular in Italy?
So the reason why is first because people have a fear of things that are unknown, okay? And so if we speak about nuclear, when we have the chance to have nuclear in Italy, people decided not to have it because of the big accidents that happened worldwide. And so they decided not to have access to the nuclear power. But let's say that now nuclear is a topic that is coming back to Italy We have some startup company that are working strongly in nuclear, and they are now working in Europe. And this is a topic that also in politics, but also through the common people, is starting to be considered again. I don't think it will be easier to have nuclear in Italy, or it will be, let's say, fast. It would take time, but I hope that people will inform themselves in a proper way and then have information to make a proper decision about it.
Many countries still are fearful of nuclear. So Malaysia is an example of that, which needs nuclear to achieve net zero, but still the population is against, and they have a whole campaign now to persuade the population. I mean, Italy actually had 4 nuclear power stations, and then when the Chernobyl accident happened in 1986, all were shut down very quickly. Then they were starting to look at nuclear again, and then Fukushima happened 15 years ago, so that immediately stopped again. So yeah, October 2025, the Council of Ministers approved a draft nuclear energy bill. So as you say, it's back on the table again. Taxonomy says nuclear is net zero compliant, so definitely is one of the ways that you can look to get off gas if floating offshore wind's not seemingly going to be that easy. There's only one project in development right now, active development, which is actually an SMR project being developed by Ansaldo Energia, Ansaldo Nucleare, EDF and Edison. But there's still little news even about that project. So a long way to go. But nuclear, I think that was interesting. If you're enjoying this podcast and think you have an inspiring story to tell, contact me, Stuart Broadley, directly, as I would love to do a sea-level podcast with you too. EIC is proud to be the UK's largest membership energy trade association and the 5th largest in the world. We are unique around the world for 3 reasons. We are truly energy agnostic, believing all energy technologies are vital to delivering energy security, affordability and a just transition. We are the only energy trade association anywhere in the world that offers a truly in-house one-stop shop for market intelligence, networks and events to help our members export, diversify and grow. And we are proud to be the voice of the energy supply chain, advocating for the 5 golden rules of a healthy energy supply chain. More details on EIC membership, the 5 golden rules, details about doing a future podcast with me, and how to contact us about anything else are in the description for this podcast. Let's talk about which was the session that was the most popular, the one that got everybody excited.
I would say data center session.
What a
Yes.
surprise. Data centers. Oh my God.
Yes. So the reason why I strongly wanted to have a data center session in this event is because now data center seems to be a very blooming market, especially here in Italy. There are a lot of companies trying to approach this new market. And that's the reason why I strongly wanted to have those companies in the event. And honestly, let me say that my background is from the oil and gas, so I'm not aware of data center, but I'm now becoming very interested in it because it's a new scenario for me as well. And I found the 3 different speeches, so 3 different point of view, but very interested and good opportunities and option for Italy as well.
Yep. Italy, like the UK, has very high cost of energy, and that's the number one challenge, combined with what one of the speakers kept talking about. Power is king. It's a power-first strategy he kept talking about. So either you have the power or you don't. And if the country can't provide the power, then the data center builder has to produce its own power. This is just driving the market in a way that's really never been seen before. He did talk about the need for kind of more permitting certainty, but that's very much a secondary thing. It was all power, power, power. So basically the data center market is an energy market. And I think that's why there was so much interest in the room. And I think one of the things that struck me was how easy it is for a country to lose the data center opportunity to a neighboring country, because for a lot of data centers, 300 kilometers away is good enough. And for most countries in Europe, that means the neighboring country. The other thing that I think was interesting was this language that was sort of sensing, is this a gas-fired market? Do you need gas or can you do it with renewables? And I think I sensed this kind of cautionary tone of, yeah, of course, we want renewables, but we need these fine lines of availability, 99.999%. So gas is what we want right now as what they called a bridge fuel until renewable with storage is ready. And ready is not even very well defined. So I interpret that as gas is preferred, but the pressure to go renewable is there. But they're not going to wait for that. That kind of absolute available renewable power and storage without any question. And there was a question for the audience to check, wasn't there, Sara, just to say, so surely you can have more flexibility in your power demand requirements. And the answer was clear. It was an absolute no. It has to be absolute baseload, no exceptions. It was striking, wasn't it?
Yeah, but let me say that our main problem here in Italy is that we are not flexible on a politics way, and bureaucracy is killing the market. Because, I mean, if you are able to be flexible, then, I mean, we are importing a lot of the gas. So we should be more smarter enough to approach new markets and try to be independent. But the main reason we are not is because we are not flexible enough, and there still are too many bureaucracy in Italy that is killing the market.
So let's then talk about what else I think kind of really resonated in the room. Green fuels, e-fuels got a lot of attention, and developers like Saipem and Eni are really focused on this all around the world, but also in Italy. I thought that was really interesting. And we kind of talked about is one in competition with the other somehow, but I don't think that was the view of the room. It was no, it's a natural extension of an oil and gas industry. The infrastructure is common, at least on the delivery side. Although, of course, on the production side, it was clear that feedstock is the problem. So you've got more demand than supply, right? And therefore the challenge is, how do we get the feedstock? And I guess in Italy, getting the feedstock is going to be a real challenge beyond the sort of 1%, which comes from, I don't know, McDonald's cooking oil or something. So what did you pick up as the challenge around feedstock?
We have very big companies in Italy, such as Eni, Saipem, very strong in these markets. But as you said, the demand is more than the supply. So on those markets, we should improve ourselves and try to be independent as well.
And this is the same all over the world, though, right? So there's a huge market, particularly for the aviation industry, but also the maritime industry. Both need green fuels, and it's not going to be agriculture-based production of that feedstock because there's land usage restrictions, and that land needs to be used for something more valuable than being used as an alternative to a fuel. So the solution to this is not yet clear. Whether it's synthetic production of fuels, we'll have to wait and see. But it's a massive opportunity. I still think there's a bit of a disconnect, though. To me, the room was not yet quite clear what it means to them as a supply chain company. Where's the real opportunity? And so I still think the opportunity is all in the feedstock. And that's kind of one of the things, the final panel, which we'll come on to talk about in a minute, they tried to join these things together. If you can use feedstock as what is the waste product for one energy industry as the feedstock for demand of another energy industry, isn't that the way? But it's so disjointed and fragmented, our industry, that nobody talks to each other. So that really came across, and that's not an Italy challenge, that's a global challenge. Nobody talks to each other. That's why our events, I think, are good, because we bring everybody together. Let's talk about things that did not come across very much in the day. Oil and gas, domestic oil and gas, even though it's such an important part of the domestic industry requirements of the country, there's not much domestic oil and gas opportunity, is there, in Italy?
No, they aren't. And as I mentioned at the beginning of our conversation, oil and gas is still a big market, and it will be for the future years. But now people are trying to diversify the markets and to meet new markets as well. Consider that in 2025, the majority of all the investments in Italy are related to renewable. And the 30% of those investments are from foreign companies. That means that Italy is an attractive market, an attractive region for the foreign investors, but not in oil and gas, but in the renewable.
Italy, of course, has an incredible supply chain. There's just a few countries that have really strong oil and gas supply chains. The UK does, and Italy does, and obviously Texas does. There aren't many others as strong as those three hubs. What is it about Italy's supply chain that's meant that it's become so strong in areas like valve manufacture and so on?
Valve manufacture is very strong. We have a very strong manufacturer of valves here in Italy, especially in the north. And new ones are coming because 2 weeks ago I was at the IVS in Bergamo, which is a domestic exhibition mainly for the valve manufacturer. And a lot of new valves manufacturers were there. So it means that even if we do have a lot of companies, still new ones are coming. So that means that also in the oil and gas, there are a lot of competitors there. So now it's a very difficult market either, especially for the
But
manufacturers.
what's interesting is it's not stopping companies from continuing to invest and new innovators to come into the market. So that means, firstly, the supply chain is strong and vibrant in Italy. Secondly, there's obviously a group of engineers and leaders that believe in staying in Italy, investing in Italy. Comparing to the UK, there would talk a lot right now about, are we going to lose the supply chain because of anti-oil and gas policies in the UK? That's not the talk in Italy. Italy is how to protect and invest and grow the supply chain capability in Italy. And I think we wish that was the same in the UK, because it's a brilliant supply chain in the UK too. But thirdly, which again is common with the UK, of course, it's a strong exporting supply chain. I mean, there's just not enough work domestically. And when you speak to companies in the supply chain in Italy, they would all say 90% of their revenues or more are for exports. So I think this is this sort of strange, slight, challenging view, which is, what is it that Italy's doing that's meaning that it's still a great place to be, to have a business and to be innovative and to have strong technology, and yet the domestic market is just not there. What is it that Italy is doing right that is creating such a great place to work?
This is something I was discussing yesterday with some people who were at our event. If you think about, for example, the Middle East and the in-country value, okay? So the in-country value originally was related to Saudi Arabia, then moved also to the Middle East. So why Italy, for example, we have a great engineer, great manufacturer, great technology, great opportunities. Why? In-country values should be considered also for Italy, just to protect ourselves, our market, and make Italy greater than we are.
So you don't have in-country value requirements, so Italy content laws or contractual obligations, policies. That's the same as the UK. So we need to get those two countries to talk to each other and see if they can come up with a plan. Another thing that didn't come across that strongly, I thought, was hydrogen. Carbon capture was talked about quite a lot with a lot of optimism, but not really about projects in Italy, but about companies in Italy doing work in other projects elsewhere. For instance, the Porthos Rotterdam cluster, but not so much in Italy, right? Again, this sort of what you think is a great opportunity to convert the gas infrastructure into hydrogen infrastructure in Italy, again, similar to the UK. It's not actually converting it to FID, is it? And the policy is not keeping up.
No, consider that hydrogen and also carbon capture were two main topics very discussed some years ago, okay? And now it seems that all the carbon capture projects we are talking about in Italy are for foreign projects, not domestic. And also hydrogen, it seems to be mainly related in the north of Italy, some part of Italy. Well, for example, we had the Hydrogen Valley, and the Hydrogen Valley is also managed by Enia, who is one of the speakers we had yesterday, but seems to be not so popular anymore as it was some years ago.
Yeah. Common problem all over the world right now that hydrogen is not getting prioritized. Well, let's now try to sort of pull this together and make conclusions on the event and kind of what we take from it. I mean, to me, the final panel where we had Shell and Saipem and Baker Hughes Turner, which is the grid company. Is it the main grid company or one of the grid companies in Italy?
It's one of the main companies in Italy, yes.
And very interesting company, because not only do they have a regulated grid infrastructure, but they also have a deregulated grid model. So they're servicing the data center market on the one side, and on the other side, having a very structured regulated model, which is bringing the power from the south to the north, as we touched on before. And I guess I would summarize as, when you put these four key players together, covering different aspects of the value chain, they start to sort of see ways that they can help each other. So, we need a feedstock for hydrogen. Well, We've got huge excess CO2 that we don't know what to do with. Can CO2 become a feedstock in some way? Can we work together to make projects happen that otherwise would not happen? Because at the moment, FIDs are kind of, looking at hydrogen only or grid only. And in fact, it's all joined up. And I think the ultimate example of this is floating offshore wind, where 70% of all of the projects in value terms in Italy that we're tracking are floating offshore wind, none of them at FID. And it's just so frustrating, isn't it? It must be frustrating for policymakers who are like, why are we not getting much interest from industry? I think it's because it's totally fragmented, and they're asking industry to trust that they can start investing in one part of the value chain and that other elements will come along eventually. And yet the demand for one is the supply for another, and they all need to come together, and it's not happening. What's your view on that? And what can we learn in terms of when we're working with policymakers and industry and the supply chain, how events like actually this Connect event we've just done are all about, you've got to bring people together and get outcomes of partnership and collaboration. It's making collaboration much clearer for me around, it's not a soft idea of try not to compete so much, actually share. It's actually the way you get the big outcomes is you have to put it all together as what was often called an ecosystem or a system of system by different speakers through the day, this idea that it all has to join together now. And data centers is the perfect example of that.
What I've learned yesterday from the final panel is that even if we had different companies attending the final panel, the main themes were communication and cooperation. And I think that it's something that was very clear yesterday. So no one can do business on their own. We need to have more communication between the companies and also more cooperation. And that's the main point I got yesterday from the final panel.
But it's the purpose of that I think became clearer yesterday, which is you're asking someone to try and develop a hydrogen business, but they don't have the demand, the off-takers. And then you're asking somebody else to find feedstock for a SAF market, but they don't have the feedstock. Get them talking together. Maybe there's a way that they can create that both demand and feedstock together, but they're not talking to each other. And then get the policymaker in the room with them, and then get the finance people in the room with them. Maybe get some technologists in the brilliant supply chain in Italy in the room with them and get them working this problem. And it doesn't seem to be happening, does it? And that's what data centers is proving to everybody. They're not waiting for policy. They know that they need power. Power is king, as was very clear. So therefore, they are bringing everybody together themselves and forcing speed of decision-making and forcing collaboration, because they know if they leave it to everybody else to do it in their own time in a fragmented way, nothing will happen.
And this is something that yesterday, especially in the first speech, was clearly mentioned.
So, Sara, any final thoughts?
It has been a very good event, okay? And I'm very satisfied of it because, as I mentioned at the beginning, the aim, let's say, of this event was reached. Everyone was happy about it, and everyone has been considered. Every different markets, every different companies has been considered. And so, yes, I'm very proud of it. Can I say it?
Well done. And now coming up next in Milan, we have our Huesca event, don't we? So tell us about that.
So this year, many Italian companies attended Survive and Thrive, and we are having an Huesca Awards in Italy in Milan, October the 8th. And this seems to be another very fantastic event to be part of. So even if a company is not attending it, they can still buy a ticket and be part of this event as well.
Yeah, so just for those listening and not sure what Huesca is and Survive and Thrive is. So I've been a CEO of EIC for 10 years, very lucky to be in this job working with these amazing people. And one of the things I learned very early on when I was working with EIC members was how sometimes markets are really hard, and yet they have incredible strategies to either survive or actually thrive. And I wanted to capture that and share those stories. So we started doing that 10 years ago, and now here we are now, 10 years in the 10th year. And we've interviewed must be 700 companies now in that time. And every year we then do detailed analysis of looking at all the success stories of companies and what are the key insights. And actually, the next Survive and Thrive report for 2026 is published in July. So very soon after this podcast comes out. So keep an eye out for that. And we'll put a link in the show notes for where you'll find that. And then all of those companies that go through the Survive and Thrive process, their success story is automatically entered into the WESCAs, which is the World Energy Supply Chain Awards, the world's biggest energy awards program of any type anywhere in the world in terms of the number of companies that participate in this. We have 7 award ceremonies around the world. And yeah, delighted to say this year, for the first time, one of those 7 is in Milan. And that's, again, Sara, thanks to the good work you've done to grow our membership and our network. I'm looking forward to the WESCA event in Milan very much. I will be there. Sara, you and I are going to co-host it. Thanks again for you, Sara. And just generally, I would say I'm very excited about the Italy market right now. And I've learned so much from my time working with you and the team and working with the whole supply chain and value chain at Connect Italy. Thank you, Sara. Ciao, ciao. Well, that's our show for today. A huge shout out to Samara, Lucas and Joao and the rest of our incredible team behind the scenes. This show truly wouldn't happen without them. If you enjoyed this podcast, it would mean the world if you'd hit that follow button. Give a 5-star rating or leave a review. It's the best way to help us keep doing what we love. And as a thank you, I'll leave you with my favourite 5-word joke. Love wind power. Big fan.